Hello, my name is Bill Spade, a retired New York City firefighter from Rescue Company Number 5. 9/11 started out as a wonderful day. I remember waking up early that morning and getting ready to leave the house. And I had a 2-month-old son in the one room, and his door was closed. He was sleeping. I didn't look in on him because I didn't want to wake him at that time in the morning. And then I looked in on my 6-year-old son, Billy, and I said, have a good day at school. It'll be one of his first days at school. I remember then getting to the firehouse just before 7 a.m. And I remember opening the door to the firehouse, and the music was blasting in the firehouse. And right away, the mood was just fantastic. And I get a phone call on the department phone. And it's a firefighter from Rescue 5 who's off duty coming home through Manhattan. And he says, Bill, I just saw a plane hit the Trade Center. I said, if it's real, I got to hang up with you. And I hang up with him. I call our boss up on Roosevelt Island, Lieutenant McQuaid. I says, Lou, I just got a report of a plane into the World Trade Center. He said that same things just came across the computer here. Nothing's confirmed yet, but it sounds real, Bill. You better head out. I remember throwing my gear on the truck and taking off. I catch a glimpse of a plane coming down the Hudson River. I watch it. It circles around towards the Statue of Liberty, comes back, and strikes into that South Tower. I remember the huge ball of flame that erupts. And I just say to myself, how are we going to put that out? That's too much fire. I remember parking my vehicle here, and I said, it's probably not a safe location, but it's the closest area. And I park, and I get my gear on and go over to the chief, and he tells me, Bill, I need you out of the North Tower. Go work out of the North Tower. And when I get to the North Tower, there's an entranceway there, main entranceway. People were coming outside, out the doors, and they didn't know which way to go, left or right. And I remember telling them, go to your right, 200 feet, down the escalator, and you're out the building. Good job, you made it. One more flight to go. And I hear a loud crashing, a loud noise. And I knew something's collapsing, but I didn't know what. And I remember I jump in those double doors. I shut the doors. I look up the stairway, and everybody is just looking down at me. It's total blackness, and that noise is just getting louder and louder. I always described it like 8 subway cars in New York City pulling into a station at the same times with their brakes squeaking. So much twisting metal and all, the loudest noise I've ever heard. Total blackness. And then it's over, and I was still alive. But then on the other side of the door, I can hear people screaming, help, help. And I said, these are the same people I just told one more flight to go. And I felt responsible for them. And I tried opening those doors, and they seemed jammed shut. I went to the other side of the stairwell, and those doors seemed shut also. With that, 2 police officers are coming down the stairs, and they're 2 emergency service police officers. And they asked me, what's up? I said, I think we're trapped in here. And then me and one of the police officers, John DeLara, we started hitting into that door, running, take a couple of steps, hit the door, and we got it open a little bit each time. When we finally got it open a foot or so, I said, I'm going to go out in that area. I'm going to find those people. I said, you stay here, leave that door open. They're going to come to you. I remember going out in that area. I had my light. I couldn't see. It was so filled with debris and so dark. And I said, if you can see my light, I'm a fireman. Come to my light. And about 15 people came to my light. I remember putting their hands on the wall and saying, follow this wall back to the door, go in there. And they did. And when that area seemed to be evacuated, I went towards that escalator that led down. And there were 2 Port Authority cops there getting up. I asked them, you guys are right? They said, yeah. I said, do you think if I bring you some people, you can lead them out? And they said, yeah. I went back to the stairwell. I remember telling the people, walk, don't run, hold hands. We're going to get out of here. And the procession began again of people evacuating from that stairwell. And I stood midway, and I was lighting up the way with my flashlight. And John DeLara, the emergency service cop, he came over, and he was lighting up the way also. Now, if you know anything about emergency service cops and rescue firemen, they don't talk much, not even at a wedding. And he said to me, what are we doing getting along like this? I remember saying to him, I guess it takes the World Trade Center to come down for us to get along. And we were joking back and forth. He told me his wife's name was Carol, that he had a 7-year-old son and a 2-year-old son. I remember telling him my wife's name is Cynthia. I have a 6-year-old son and a 2-month-old. In the middle of all this, guarding people out, we're talking about our families. He said, man, we should go back and see who's left. I said, you're probably right. And we got back to that stairwell. His boss was there, Sergeant Curtin. He pointed at me, and he said, I think we get out of this building now. I remember pointing right back. I said, I think you're right. Well, we weren't out of that building 30 seconds, and now I hear it coming down on top of us. I took maybe one step towards that window. I got picked up and blown 40 feet. I remember smacking into the wall. I remember trying once and then twice, and I rolled into that window. I put my head under a desk, and I crawled up in a ball. I started getting buried. And very quickly, I said goodbye to my wife. I said goodbye to my 6-year-old son. And then I had to say goodbye to my 2-month-old. I remember saying, you'll never know your dad. And that hurt like hell. That was the worst part of the whole day. After about 45 seconds, I estimated it to be. They said that building came down in about 10, 11 seconds. I was still alive. I had to put my finger in my mouth to create an airway to breathe. But I got myself out. I looked around the room. It was me and 3 other firefighters that were left. We laid on the ground. We breathed the air off the ground. And one firefighter says, help us coming to get us. We'll stay here. I remember kind of chuckling. I said, no one is coming here to get us. We got to get ourselves out of here. After about an hour or so, one of the firefighters thought he saw a hole up top that we can get through. And sure enough, at the end of the room, sure enough, there was a hole. I said, I'll lead the way. Made it bigger, and I jumped first. And the other guys jumped down. And we went further up the block to VC and West Broadway, and I saw a chief there. I remember going up to him, no helmet, batted. I saluted. I said, Chief, there's been a collapse. I lost some guys back there. You got to give me some men to go back and get them. And he said to me, Bill, get in the ambulance, get out of here. We lost a lot of men here today. I remember getting taken to Metropolitan Hospital, and one of the nurses got through on his cell phone to my wife. I remember telling her, I'm going to live. I'll be here a few days. I said, but I'm going to live. Just take care of the boys. Later that night, I'm in the hospital, and I get a phone call from my brother-in-law, who's in Rescue 5 also. And he said to me, Bill, did you hear the news? All the guys are gone. I started naming every guy I had breakfast with. He said, Bill, they're all gone. And I remember naming all the names again. He goes, Bill, they're all gone. So 12 of us responded, and I was the only one to make it home. I hung up with him, and then very shortly afterwards, I get a call from my wife. She says, did you get the news? I said, I did. She said, what about the other news? I said, what other news? She said, your Uncle Joe was on Flight 93 that went down in Pennsylvania. So I have a story, not just my story, but the story of so many other people. I think it's just so important to keep it alive and to never forget.